everyone, it's Deke. Welcome in for another Wraith guide. Today I'm going to talk about how to optimize your Crusader. We're going to go down 10 tips that I think are going to benefit beginners greatly, and I think that some veterans might get something out of this as well. I've been playing Crusader since launch, so for about 11 months, and I think I've figured out some tricks that help optimize your play in all modes of the game. First up, let's talk about key binding. This seems like a no-brainer, but there's some really important things that you can do in the game to optimize how your character controls. This is actually very important on Crusader because when you're using the skill Draw and Quarter and you're mounted on your horse, you want to be attacking the entire time you're moving around. So I find it very helpful to unbind my move attack skill and bind them separately. So I have my mouse button is moving my character, and then additionally I have an attack key bound. So I can do both of those things at the same time without one interfering with the other. This is very helpful for putting out as much damage as you possibly can while mounted. Also, there are a lot of bugs in the PC version of the game due to different planes you're moving on. So if you're going upstairs or downstairs or around pillars or anything, your horse tends to get hung up on things. If you're not already using WASD, it's important to bind those keys somewhere. So for instance, you could use the arrow keys so that when you get hung up in the game and you're unable to move with your mouse, you can quickly swap over and move with the keys. Okay, this is a big one, skill tags. This may require you to do a little bit more investigation, but we're going to go over it quickly here. Every skill in the game has some type of tag associated with it that determines what type of interaction it's going to have with things like set items, gems, or other things in the game. So it's very important to orient yourself to what skill type you're using in conjunction with your other items to figure out how to best maximize your skills. You see here, shield charge has dash and control. Spinning shield has gather. These are very important. So once you add an essence to one of your skills, these tags may change. So that's very important in understanding how they're going to interact with your sets. So let's take a look at Condemn. It considers the skill a buff skill when I have Akarat's Rebuke on, but when I change to the Iron Suzerain, it considers it a gather skill, meaning the same skill could have different interactions depending on which tag is represented. This is extremely important for any class in the game, but especially for Crusaders, as we're one of the classes that are buffing people the most. You need to make sure that your skill essences have the right tag so that they're triggering your Urges set bonus and your Bottled Hope. So just one more example of this. I'm going to put the Little Lance essence on my main hand, and you'll see that this becomes a dash skill, which is very important. Falling Sword becomes a dash skill. So if you pair this with the Gloom Guide set, you'll be getting increased damage every time you use a dash skill. And one thing to note for Crusaders, Draw and Quarter does not count as a dash skill. Okay, speaking of sets, let's talk about set bonuses. Now, there's many sets in the game that can benefit you in a lot of different ways. I love to use the Mount Bank set for PvP, but across the board, the Vitheu's Urges set is the absolute best for Crusaders because you get 30% beneficial effect duration to yourself and your party members. In addition to this, if you're using the 4-piece set, you're going to also grant those targets 30% attack speed for 3 seconds. Here's the big deal about the set. There's no cooldown on this effect, meaning that if you're wearing the set, you're always getting 30% additional beneficial effect to anything that is tagged as a buff skill. Also, you can chain trigger this set bonus every 3 seconds to drag it out and keep it on you almost permanently. So if you're looking for a set to build, I would say start with 4-piece Urges and then figure out a good 2-piece to go along with that. It could be Banquet, it could be Shalbas, it could be Grace, but you want that 4-piece Urges for almost every Crusader build in the game. Okay, here's a quick one, Draw and Quarter. Did you know that Draw and Quarter gives you a maximum of 60% movement speed? You'll see here I have 16% movement speed before I cast Draw and Quarter, but once I cast it, it only brings me to 70%. Keeping this in mind, you kind of want to have 10% movement speed on your character at all times so that you get that maximum 70% when you're on your horse. Okay, let's talk about Paragon trees. Now, as most of you know, there's been an update in the game to where now Paragon trees are changeable at any time and they can also be bound to your closets. I think people are still sleeping on this. This is one of the biggest changes that Diablo Immortal has ever had. because any build that you're trying to play, you can customize your unique properties from the Paragon trees, and you can also maximize the statistics that you want for whatever activity you're doing in the game. Another huge thing that I have to mention, when I'm in a PvP match, I start in Gladiator, and once my cheat death goes down, I swap to Survivor because there's a lot of bonuses. You can swap your Paragon as long as you're not directly in combat. For all of my guides, I put Paragon calculators in the description, so you can find how I like to spec all of my builds by following the links in my description box. Okay, let's get into Reforging. Now, I know a lot of you probably don't like to do PvP, but just do 3 a day to get your Reforged stones. If you do 3 a day during a cycle in a 3-week reign, you'll make it to Legend and you'll be able to get your 90 Reforged stones, and those are very important because you can gain a lot of really important stats from Reforging. Almost all the best stats you get from Reforging come from the Wildfire family, so it makes sense just to go ahead and get at least 3 of those so that you can get the family bonus, which will proc a Hydra that does a little bit of damage as a summon. Also, you want to have 3% beneficial effect on every piece of gear you have. So you want to roll that first. The very first property you ever get as you're leveling up your gear, go ahead and roll and get beneficial effect duration. After that, start rolling the Wildfire family to get your set bonus. You can have a maximum of 4% primary attack damage, 2% all skill damage, 4% execute damage, 3% critical hit damage, and 3% beneficial effect duration. So in trying to optimize your stats, you can get a maximum of 18% beneficial effect duration from Reforging, but you can get a total of 42% from your gear and Reforging combined. Also, skill cooldown is very big for the Crusader, and you can get 12% of that from gear. You can get another 3% from your demonic remains for challenge rifts, and there's also a few more percent you can get if you're using a bottled hope depending on its rank. I bring up these stats now because they are the most important for Crusaders. Okay, let's talk about critical hit chance and critical hit damage. You may think that because you have a holy banner that gives you permanent critical hit, that you don't need critical hit chance. I want to debunk that. Critical hit chance increases your critical hit damage from your banner. Your holy banner has a cap on it. Critical hit damage is typically double damage, so 200%. But when you use the holy banner, you only get 135% instead of double damage. So your critical hit chance will get you that additional 65% to bring you up to 200% critical hit damage. So that number is actually very important. Both of these numbers are important because this is how you do massive damage. Okay, let's talk about buff triggers. What are buff triggers? Well, they're the things that we were talking about earlier with your skill tags. Skills with the tag buff will trigger your effects from gems and set bonuses. Things like Vithu's Urges, Bottled Hope, Blessed Pebble, Valor's Retribution. These are all buffs. One thing you want to keep in mind when you're pushing your buttons, you don't just want to spam all these things at one time, you want to stagger them. If you're wearing Urges, every 3 seconds you're able to gain increased attack speed. So, if you wait for that buff to end, and then you hit another skill with the buff tag, you'll re-trigger all of your effects. Now, Bottled Hope has a cooldown associated with it, for 20 seconds, but Urges does not. Blessed Pebble does not. So these things are able to be triggered over and over and over again. So it's a good practice to cast your skills in a staggered manner. Okay, you've already heard me mention a couple of legendary gems, so let's talk about those now. Whether you're free to play or you're welling out in the game, I think it's important to have a rank 10 Blessed Pebble in your kit as a Crusader. When I'm doing world farming or dungeon farming, I do not use my max resonance gems, and I'm not even that high resonance, but I do always like to fall back on a few gems that are a lower rank that get me better benefits for the activities I'm doing. Blessed Pebble is absolutely a must-have for every Crusader. They're easy to get to rank 10, even if you're free to play, you should have one in your kit. Now, the more difficult gem to attain is the Bottled Hope, but I would say that the Bottled Hope is probably one of the most important gems that you can have as a Crusader. The 2 stars are selling for about 55,000 platinum on my server, which is quite steep, but If you save up your plat over time, you sell some normal gems, you sell some skill stones, you can easily get a hold of one of these. And I would say that that's worth doing. It's worth investing in a Bottled Hope. Even if you only get a few ranks into it, you'll have the great benefit of getting movement and attack speed every time you cast a beneficial effect, and you're going to be doing that a whole lot as a Crusader. In addition to that, it also gives you some flat cooldown reduction, which is really cool. At low ranks you won't get a lot, but it's still worth it. I know we've gone over a ton in this video, so if you have any questions or thoughts about any of this content, just leave me a comment and I'll be sure to respond. Thanks everyone for checking out the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and happy crusading.